Today on the channel, I upgrade the Squier Strat that I bought for $89. If you saw my prior video on this Squier Strat, you know that I got it for $89, which was a great deal, and I was deciding whether I should part this thing out and sell the neck and then sell the body separately, or should I upgrade it. I asked everybody to chime in and give me some comments and feedback on what I should do, and everybody was like, do a super Strat, modify it, paint it, stripe it, put better pickups in it, whatever. So I decided that I'm going to keep it. I like the way that this thing plays. The neck is great, the body feels good, the electronics are fine, and I've got some pickups that are really good that I'm going to replace and get it to sound better. That was my major complaint, was I didn't think the pickup sounded that good, but the playability was great. So today we're going to do that. Hopefully this will be an interesting video. So what I've got a few things I'm going to try. First of all, this guitar is really dirty. I'm going to clean it up really nice. I'm going to change the strings. I've got these Fender strings I'm going to put on here. These are nice. I put them on all my guitars. I've got this bridge. I recently bought a Kramer Beretta Special, and I replaced the bridge with a nicer Made in Mexico bridge. I'm going to put this on this Affinity Strat. I think this will fit. I don't think it's too deep. If it is, I'll have to stick with this one. I'm going to check it out. But hopefully this will fit. It's cleaner. I like these saddles better than these. It'll just make the guitar look newer. It's, I don't have to clean all the funk out of this. Of course, I'll keep this for later. I might put that on something else. The holes, everything looks like it'll line up just fine. So we should be good. I never throw away parts. Guys, gals, if you ever start fixing guitars, or if you already do, you know that you never throw out stuff. You will have a collection of things that you will need one day. For instance, these whammy bars. One of these probably is going to fit. One of these will definitely match up to this, and if not, it'll match up to this, so I'll have a bar. This thing did not come with a bar. Somebody gave me these these guitar polish and fret cleaners, so I'm going to use these. I've never heard of this brand before, Trick whatever. That's probably some Amazon stuff. The pickups I'm going to install are these Twang Strat Pickups by Tone Specific. These pickups are very expensive. A buddy of mine that works with Tone Specific a couple years ago sent me a bunch of pickups to try out. One of my friends at Red Circle Guitars sent me a bunch of these, and I took these out of a Strat that I sold recently, and I'm going to put these Tone Specifics in these guitars. These are very, very high-end custom wound pickups, so it's probably 3 times worth the value of this guitar, but who cares? I got them for free, and I'm going to put them in there. So, and this is not a sponsored video. The last thing that I'm going to attempt, maybe y'all are going to hate this, but I looked for a really nice white pick guard in my collection. I don't have any good pick guards for this thing, so I'm going to more than likely just keep this on there. But check out this ugly color scheme. I could go with this blue and green, so I don't know about that. That's pretty gross looking, but hey, we'll check it out. We'll take all this off and put this on there and see what it looks like. But this is definitely a nicer pick guard, and it's higher quality. But who knows? Maybe this funky pick guard is what the Squier needs. So we're going to take a look at this. I'm going to take this thing apart, take the strings off of it, and I'll show you what the inside of this Squier looks like. Yeah, hopefully these strings won't snap as I'm doing this, but I think the worst thing about working on guitars is dealing with guitar strings. But I just thought I'd share this misery with everybody while I started it, so we can all share in the agony of removing crusty, gross strings together. Hope you enjoyed that. So check this out. I got the strings off of it. These things are wobbly. So one thing you want to do is tighten these up. Every single one of these tuners is moving. I mean, look at this. So I mean, these I can loosen these up by hand. These have got to be tightened up for tuning stability. And this thing was cruddy, man, really gross. I feel like Dave Hester pulled this thing out of a storage locker on Storage Wars or something. Got to clean this up. Yep. Just going to use my handy dandy crescent wrench on these things. I could use a socket, but this works just fine. Yeah, alright, so these definitely needed to be tightened up. Can't believe how loose these were. I mean, I guess that's 20 years worth of playing perhaps, or maybe they just never were that tight. I mean, the inside's going to move a little bit because they've got moving pieces, but you don't want these things so loose you can unscrew them with your fingers. I mean, that's just, stuff will start moving around, and even the slides, like, look at that one, man. Holy smokes. Glad I checked these. A lot of times you'll just go and change your strings and move on, and hear a lot of guys complaining about, man, this stop tail piece guitar doesn't stay in tune. You know, it could be a Les Paul, it could be a Paul Reed Smith. I had a Paul Reed Smith, a very nice PRS that I loved it for, I used it for a long time, but that thing would not stay in tune. And I cleaned the nut on that thing and tightened up these were loose. Didn't have any tuning issues with it after that. It drove me nuts for the longest time, but it was something very simple. All right, got that done. All right, let's do some of this fretboard cleaner, some of the trick. Then I'll put some lemon oil on it. So let's do that. While we're doing this, I'm just gonna spray down the guitar with some polish since the strings are off of it. We'll get this thing soaking a little bit. Make sure I don't spray any in my coffee. That would not be good. Cool. I recently purchased me a fret polishing tool that I think I'm going to try out for the first time. It covers up the fretboard and just exposes the fret so you can get the frets clean. So I'm going to turn off the camera because that's going to take just a little bit of time. But I'm going to put that thing over these frets, and I'm going to take some of my steel wool, my fine steel wool, and polish these frets up just a little bit. So, and I'll check this out. Make sure I get all the funk off of this, then I'll put some of that. I got some of this 65 lemon oil, it's the best. I'm going to put that on here. So I'll check back in with you in just a moment. So check out this gadget I got. This thing was like $8. I got 2 of them and a file for working on frets, and you just put it over like this, and you can protect your fretboard. This is a really soft piece of sanding paper, very low grit. So I'm just gonna gently clean these frets one by one, and that protects me from getting my fretboard. You can see the dust coming off of that thing. Yeah, I can see it. I don't know if you can see it on camera or not, but that's a lot cleaner. So this will be very fast. This way you don't have to tape up the fretboard and take a lot of time just to get your frets super clean. So I'm going to go over the whole fretboard and clean it up, and I'll be back in a moment. All right, I got the whole fretboard. This little guy was great because up here in these upper frets, this fat tool won't reach. You can't get some of the higher ones because it's too fat to get in there. So looks good. We'll do this one more time with a fretboard cleaner. Like this. and then we'll treat it with some lemon oil. I'm really impressed that there's no jagged edges on this thing. It's almost like they had it worked on and you know, someone professionally like work on these frets, but I know the guy or girl that had this guitar, I know they didn't have anybody work on this thing. There's just no way. But the neck is really nice. This thing's old. It's 2001, so maybe they're still that good. This is my only experience with, you know, Squier Strat, really. So I love it. The frets are great. I couldn't bring myself to part it out. It just plays really nice and feels great on my hands. So, you know, why get rid of it if it's functional and you enjoy it? After all, I mean, the guy with the most dies with the most gear wins, right? Isn't that the way that it goes? It's probably just one of my stupid philosophies, or excuses, I should say, for buying so much gear. That really turned out super good. Love it. The body polished up nice too. I polished up the body, and it's, you know, there's not a mark on this thing. It's like it's been in a time capsule. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna wipe off this fret, this lemon oil. I'm gonna undo these screws, and I'm gonna unmount these pickups, and we'll take a look at the inside, what this thing looks like. First of all, I'm gonna just solder in these pickups and put strings on it, and that new bridge. So that's the next phase. I don't know if any of you are interested in seeing me do this, so I guess I'll assume that you are. For any of you that have not replaced pickups, the trickiest part, I think, about soldering is getting the three-way switches in Les Pauls wired correctly, and these toggle switches can be a little tricky also. There's a lot of different ways to solder pickups and connections to these things. There's a lot of different specialty wiring. I always go with kind of a stock wiring when I do stuff. It can be really hard to find the information on the internet too. There's so many options, and unfortunately sometimes when you buy pickups or switches, they don't come with the best directions. So a lot of it's trial and error. You're not going to hurt anything by trying. It can be very frustrating. To this day, I can't stand soldering pickups because it's just, it's frustrating, man. It really is. All right, so what I've got here, frustrating point number one, what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to disconnect this jack wire. Y'all can't see it, but there's the input jack. There's absolutely no lead wire whatsoever for the ground or for the jack. So what I'm gonna do is stop the camera. I'm gonna snip the wire to the jack, or undo this jack so I can get this pick guard off, and show you what that looks like. Fender input jacks are super easy to work with. So this piece of metal on the input jack that connects to the actual jack itself, the input, that's the ground. That's where the metal connects. So this bare wire is the ground, and that's the lead wire. So I'm just gonna solder right there and just pull this thing off of the input jack so I can pull this pick guard off, and I'm gonna flip the guitar over and unsolder the ground that is on the claw. So I'll show you that in just a moment. There it is. There's the ground wire that's connected to the inside. So I'm gonna undo that. If your guitar ever buzzes on a Strat and you're getting this horrible ground noise, check in here and make sure this thing hasn't come undone. That'll give you a world of nightmares. Also, the ground wire to the jack may be loose or have come off the one of the pots on the inside of the guitar. So I'm going to undo this, and the ground on the input jack will take this pick guard off. All right, so the moment of truth, I got everything undone. The wires are unsoldered for the grounds and the jack. Cool, piece of cake. All right, I was kind of hoping this thing might be routed for a humbucker. I was like, man, if it was routed for a humbucker, I've got a pick guard for a humbucker. I've got a Seymour Duncan distortion. I could have done a humbucker single configuration, but that's fine. That's good. So here's your ceramic. These are magnets, so these are ceramic pickups. One thing you want to do is pay close attention to where these wires have ran. So when we rewire this thing, I'm going to take these pickups. They're going to be 2 wires each, and the hot is the colored wire. And I'm gonna undo all this, obviously, but the colored wires, like you can see, there's yellow, there's white, and this one's also white. So they've got the pickups. Pickups looks like they're wired in here. These go to the tone and the volume knobs and stuff like that. So the only thing we're gonna do is line up the colors to where they go here. And then we gotta take the ground. The grounds they all go to one pot. Like, look at them all, they're all just crammed right on that pot because they just have to ground somewhere. And it sounds simple, but it can be a little daunting. You gotta take all this crap apart. But I suggest taking pictures and paying attention when you do this sort of thing, and you'll cause yourself a lot less trouble. But we're gonna take these ceramics out, and I'll save those for something else. Cool. Before I wire up those pickups, I'm gonna replace this. I'm gonna take this bridge off, and I probably should undo the springs on the back first, simply because there's a lot of tension on this thing, but I'm not too worried about it. This takes a little bit of time. These screws are long that hold these bridges in because there's a lot of tension, a lot of torque, or whatever you want to call it, that pull on this. And this thing cannot move. If this moves, the stability of everything is screwed up. Your bridge is one of the single most important components of the guitar. One reason these Squiers and affordable guitars are so affordable, because they make these things out of cheap metal, as little metal as they can. And that's why sometimes you have a cheap guitar that doesn't play very well, because the bridge just doesn't hold up. So most of the time you can replace the bridge in a guitar and solve a lot of issues. So it was that simple. So let's take a look at this thing and see. Yeah, it's gonna work. Technically, there's a little bit more weight on this Fender bridge. There's more weight on this, and they feel about the same, truthfully, as far as weight. But I really like these. I could take these saddles off and stick them on here, and stick with this thicker bridge. I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna keep the weight of this thing, and I'm gonna upgrade the saddles. I'm gonna put these saddles over here. That'll take a little bit more time than I wanted, but I'm gonna opt for more metal and better saddles. So I'm gonna marry these two together. So check that out. I put the Kramer Beretta saddles on this Fender bridge. It's a little bit thicker bridge, so I got more weight, and I cleaned this bridge up really nice with some Windex and some Lysol cleaner. So it's all nice and clean, sanitized with I like these saddles better. So I'm going to wait to wire the pick guard before I put the bridge back on and do the ground wiring. All right, so fun times. God, I hate taking out single coil pickups. I can't stand replacing pickups in general, but we're gonna do it. So I don't know how much of this I'm gonna video or how much I'll include in this YouTube thing, so we'll see. I don't know if you guys are interested in seeing this or not. For every 10 guys that aren't, there's another 10 that are. So what I'm going to do is I have not unsoldered these. And there's a method to my madness. I want to make sure I see where this stuff is soldered onto this 5-way switch, because I stink at getting stuff soldered correctly to switches, and I really don't feel like taking 5 hours of my time today soldering and unsoldering just to get this toggle switch right. That's one reason I didn't decide to replace this toggle switch. I could have put a nice American Fender toggle switch in here, but as you recall, if you watched the first video, I went to buy a toggle switch for another guitar, and they were between 15 and 25 bucks, and I was like, heck, for 89 I'll just buy this Squire. So I went ahead and ordered myself some pre-wire toggle switches on eBay last night. I'm gonna get them on May 26th, so I'm gonna wait for those. That's about 3 weeks away, 2.5 weeks away, so I'm in no rush. So here they are. Here's the Squire Pickups. Cool. Magnets always grab everything. Normally I have a magnetic bowl that I keep everything in, but I'm not using it right now. Okay, so let's see. There's the ground wire that went to the bridge, and this is, let's see, where is it? There's the ground wire that went to the input jack. It's already come loose. It was soldered. This ground was soldered to the pot, so we'll have to make sure we get that fixed. First order of business is to get rid of this clip and not snip any wires, because they've got this thing really nicely. They got this thing really nicely wired together, super clean, but we got to break this thing off so we can get to all this garbage. So let's see. And this is where it gets messy, guys and gals. All right, so there is the setup that we had right there. So these are not labeled. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take one at a time, and on my notepad I'm gonna write down where these things were soldered onto this pot. It's kind of like undoing Christmas lights. It stinks, man. So you don't want to just cut these wires off and solder. I could just cut these and solder I could just do it like this, you know, but I'm gonna do it the right way. I'm gonna unsolder the points off the toggle switch and keep all this lead wire, because later on, if I decide to use these pickups in something else or sell them to somebody, you gotta have that lead wire, because it makes wiring possible, especially if you're putting these things in a pick guard. You need a lot of wire to reach to where you're going to. So anyway, I'm gonna stop videoing this because it's only gonna take me about 2 minutes. I'm gonna untangle all this stuff, unsolder these points, and I'm gonna solder the pickups these are these tone specifics that I've got, and each one's labeled. This one's a bridge. It's got bridge right there. It says tone specific 1954. Tone specific 54. That's a bridge. And they wrote on this one tone specific. There's middle, and then this one's a neck. So I'm gonna just wire these. Put the hot, which is the black or the white, and then I'm gonna solder the black to the pot for the ground. It's quite easy. The worst part is getting through some of this mess here, but clearly this bridge pickup is going right there. That white lead off of this is going right there, and then the black is going to the volume pot. So the black goes right there. So it looks like all the black wires are going to the volume pot. Sometimes they have them going to the tone, but it's going to the volume. And then it looks like the middle one is yellow. The middle is going to the middle right there. And then this white wire for the neck pickup is going right there. So it's pretty simple. So it's bridge, neck, or bridge, middle, neck right there. Bridge, middle, neck. It always seems like it would go the direction of the pickups, but you got to understand you're flipping the switch, so it's reversed. And then these things are soldered together, and which is, you can see that wire right there is connected there, and that gives it the ability to jump. So when you're in the middle positions, you can get various pickups together at the same time, and obviously run tone to each pickup if you want. So there's many different ways to wire these. That's why I'm not screwing around with this today. I'm gonna just follow exactly how Squire did it and call it a day. So it's a 15-minute job. All right, legit dudes. That was 5 minutes. So I got these tone specifics wired to this in the appropriate way. And oops, this ground wire just came off. I gotta get my soldering gun and put it right back on there. Here's a little tip for anybody that's soldering or kind of new to soldering. Don't buy a cheap soldering gun. Get something that's really good. Get something for 30 bucks. Go to Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever, your hardware store. Buy a soldering iron a soldering gun for 30, 40 bucks. They get super hot, and a lot of times the solder will not stick to the pots because it's just not making the solder hot enough. You're not getting a hot enough point, and you'll waste so much time. But get a really good soldering iron. I learned that the hard way. After doing this for a couple of years, early on, I couldn't figure out why my solder wasn't working right, and it was the temperature of the soldering gun. So anyway, I'm gonna solder this ground wire back on here, and I fixed the input jack. I got that soldered there. The ground wire for the bridge is good to go. So I'm just gonna do this real quick. Put these pickups in the pick guard, and run these ground wires back through the body, and then we'll attach the claw and the tremolo and the input jack. Okay, so all right, so we got it ready to go. Tell you the one thing I wanted to show you, you can get these screws that have these little rubber tips instead of the springs. This is the way to do it if you're gonna do Strat pickups. It's so much easier. These tone specific pickups come with these types of mounting screws already, so it's nice. You want to get the triangle piece pointed towards the bridge on a right-handed guitar. That's just for polarity reasons. I'm not a scientist, but that's that's the reason for it. But you don't want it to be out of phase or something. So when you just put these pickups over the screws with those little rubber things instead of the springs, man, it just makes life so much better. It really does. You don't have springs flying all over the place on the floor, losing pieces, kicking the cat out of frustration. Just kidding, you would never do that. But so I'm gonna wire these in, or not wire, but I'm gonna screw these in. I'm gonna get my wires kind of put together in a nice fashion so I can get this pick guard back on the guitar, which is always a challenge with all this junk going on. So I'll take care of that here shortly. All right, so I got this thing taped up. Just got some painter's tape on there, not a big deal. Hey, we're low budget here on the channel, so that works. And I took the pick guard, or not the pick guard, but I took the polish and I rubbed this guitar buff this down a little bit more so that it looked nicer. It was pretty grubby. Buffed it up a little bit. I decided not to go with this. This is just too, it's just too gross. It's ugly. I don't like it. So we're going back to this Squire, going back to the old Squire pick guard, and then we'll raise these pickups as needed for playing. And I've just got to run this ground wire through the body right here. And I got to run the input jack wiring through the input jack hole, and then I'll solder in that boat, solder the input jack boat real easily, just 2 connections, and we'll be ready to string this thing up. Sometimes getting these wires into these holes can be like the most difficult thing. It's like, you know, could you give me a little bit more to work with, fellas? Can you help me out with that? But ultimately perseverance comes through. So it's a little delicate. You gotta hold this pick guard in place. Make sure that this thing comes through the backside. We're good. Make sure you don't pull it too hard so you don't pull any loose wires off, because it sucks to have to pull this thing back off. I suggest when you get these things wired up, put 1 string on it and 1 screw to hold the pick guard in, because if something's messed up with your wiring, you don't want to have to take all the strings off of it and all that business. But it looks good. It fit good. I gotta put a screw in here, hold this down. We'll mount that bridge, solder this boat back on here, and just double check that we're getting signal out of all the pickups in tone. Okay, so I jumped ahead just a little bit. I got the wiring done. I got this boat wired. That was very fast and very easy. Got the ground wire connected. So I just have to connect the 3 springs. Once I get the springs on it, I'm going to run a test. I mean, I could do it now, I suppose, but plug it in and tap each pickup in each position. We'll test to make sure we've got signal. And if we do, then we'll run strings on it and demo it out. So far, this has taken about 90 minutes, an hour and a half. So not really a huge project. Takes a little bit of time, a little patience. You got to know what you're doing. So the first time you do it, you'll run into some snafus, but overall, easy project. Hopefully this will come out sounding wonderful, and it already looks better. The neck and the bridge cleaned up, the body polished out real nice, tightened up the tuners. I'm going to graphite the nut, so I'm pretty excited. All right, we got the strings, or the string on it, so we're going to check out I got this thing plugged into a Fender Champ, so we're going to run this thing through this amp and check the pickups. So let's see. Sounds good. It's good. Nice. All right, tone's working. Everything's good. Sweet. We'll get this thing strung up and do a real demo. Here it is, the finished product. This thing came out really nice. Got it all cleaned up, spit shined, got the nut graphite in there, got the frets polished up pretty good, fretboard treated, got the tone specific 1954s in there, got the pickup height adjusted the way that I think it should be. Got this matching tremolo arm that I found on there. I didn't clean up the knobs, but who cares? Everything's back on it, wired just right. Buffed, polished. This thing is in thing's in mint condition. I mean, this is really like showroom condition, this guitar. And it's 20 years old, so 21, hard to believe. So we're going to plug this in and give it a spin.